game. Now, is that part of the script? Well, kind of. And let me explain something to you. What if I told you that the game was actually rigged by the players? Not Vegas, not the media, but by the players themselves. You would probably say, well, then that means they have something to do to be involved in all this betting that's going on. Well, I'll tell you, the game is actually rigged from within. Now, what I didn't tell you about that story of Ndamukong Suh is what he told me after the game. And so I'll never forget, I go up to him after the game and he comes up to me, he says, Flu, my name is Flu because everybody calls me Flu. He says, you know, I didn't mean to ignore you, bro. I was just in the middle of my visualization. I said, bro, what is that? And you should have seen the disgust on his face when I asked him that question. He was like, bro, are you serious right now? I said, yeah, what does visualization mean? I've never even heard of that term in my life. So Suh looks at me, and this is how Suh is, and he says, all right, bro, let me put you on game. He said, you know how you're always in the right gap? You know how you're always listening to the coach? You always run the play that's called? And he said, you know how I never listen to coach? I'm never in the right gap. I'm always freestyling. And this is what he said to me, and this cut me to my soul, y'all. He said, and you know how I make the plays and you don't? That was harsh. That was cold, but it was the truth. And this is what he said to me that absolutely changed my life. He said, the reason I make these plays like this is because you think that me being on the field today is the first time I've been on this field. I have imagined myself making these plays 1,000,000 times this week. Come on, bro. Get your mental game together. And he said, I hope you have a mental coach. I didn't even know one existed. And so he said, oh my God, Flu, we got to get you together. He walks off. And so at that moment, I realized that certain players do things differently than other players. I realized at that moment that the game was actually rigged from within. Now, this is incredibly important because if this was true, then I needed to try this myself. And so I did. And I'll never forget this. After Ndamukong told me that, I said, you know what? I got a specific sack dance that I want to do against the Chicago Bears. That's who we're playing the next week. And one of my friends, Willie Young, he played for the Chicago Bears, and he used to always do this going fishing sack dance. And so that week I told myself, I'm going to go fishing and point at Willie on the sideline because he played for the Chicago Bears. He was my friend. So every night before I would go to sleep, I would visualize myself going fishing. Every morning before I even got out of bed, what was I doing? I was going fishing on the quarterback, Jay Cutler at the time. It even got to the point where I was just in my room before the games, even during the week, during practice, and I was practicing what kind of fish I was going to catch. And you could imagine the coach put me in the game. It was 3rd and 8. He puts me in, we were in an easy stunt. That means I go outside, the defensive end comes underneath. And so defensive end comes underneath, I go outside, and who was waiting right there in front of me? It was Jay Cutler, the quarterback. I got my sack, got up, went fishing, and pointed at Willie Young. That picture right there is exactly what happened. So that's when I got proof, confirmation, that the game is actually rigged from the inside out, not in the way that you would think. But what does this mean for you? Because this doesn't matter for NFL players. It matters for you. Well, I want to tell you that there's actually some spiritual laws that are working in this thing. It's not just about sports, but this is about life. And we got to understand not just the spiritual aspect of it, but actually from the standpoint of quantum physics, it all works hand in hand. Because if you get this, just like Ndamukong Suh got this, just like Tom Brady got this, just like Calvin Johnson got this, just like Randy Moss got this, just like Jerry Rice got this. Jerry Rice, and there's a story about Jerry Rice, when he was in college or just got out of college and he was going to their college bowl game or their all-star game, and a question was asked to Jerry Rice. And the question was, and this is one of my friends asked him, hey, who are you? because he never met Jerry Rice. Now, this is when they were both at the college all-star game. The response that Jerry Rice gave was so different than anything that you would ever hear. Jerry Rice responded. He didn't say, "My name is Jerry Rice." This is what he said. He said, "I am the greatest wide receiver in NFL history. My name is Jerry Rice." And what did Jerry Rice end up becoming? The greatest wide receiver in NFL history. His name, Jerry Rice. So what are the spiritual and the quantum physics and the quantum mechanics applications to this? I'm gonna tell you everything, because you gotta understand this, that we live on three simultaneous planes of existence. We live in the spiritual, we live in the mental, and we live in the physical, or the material. Now, you got to get this, because most people, what they do is they focus really on the material side of things most times. That's what I did when I was first in the NFL. Before I learned all this stuff, I focused on the material. I wanted to be the hardest worker in the room. I wanted to be the person that was always there first, the last person to leave, right? And I was just so focused. I put 100% of my effort right here in the physical. But when I saw Ndamukong Suh, a lot of times in practice, I'll be honest with you, bro didn't practice hard. He did when he did, but not all the time. But what he did was he worked the mind harder than anybody that I've been around up until that point. And so why is this so important? Because I got to get you to understand this. See, when I say spiritual, please don't think that I mean like religious or anything like that. All I mean is just unseen. That's all spiritual means. And so when something is unseen, well, we already know that the things that are seen come from the things that are unseen. Like you can't really see an atom. I mean, of course you can under a microscope, but you can't see an atom. And listen to me, even though you can see an atom under a microscope, did you know that an atom is comprised of 99% of empty space? Just think about everything that you can see right now, this whiteboard that we can see right now. Do you know that of the entire electromagnetic spectrum, only 0.0035% of it is visible light? So you have to say that most of what we can touch and most of what we can see is actually not there. So what I'm saying is, when you only focus on the physical aspect of it, you're only focusing on a tiny fraction. And when I say the spiritual aspect of it, I just mean the unseen. And see, and this is what all the great athletes did. They focused on the unseen aspect of it, but the only way to focus on the unseen aspect of it, there's only one way, is to use your mind, the mental aspect of it. See, the mental is the most important thing that you have here on this earth, because the mental can pull from the spiritual and it can create in the physical. And that's why all these great players, that's why Jerry Rice was able to say, "I am the greatest wide receiver in NFL history," before he stepped foot on the field. Why? Because he went to the unseen. See, it was just unseen by all of us. But you can see the unseen when you use what? The mental side of things. And that's what all the great athletes do. That's how this game is rigged. Now, let's talk about it from a quantum mechanical point of view. Because we have to understand that everything in life is based upon waves and particles. That's it. Everything is waves and particles. So in quantum physics, they call it the field, right? Or the quantum field. Basically, everything in the quantum field is wave form. And then it collapses into particle form. Now, there's a thing called the observer effect in quantum mechanics. And the observer effect is as such. Let's say you take a particle, an electron or something like that. And then if you're not observing it, if somebody does not put their attention on it, well, it acts in a very erratic behavior. It's just like the waves of the sea. Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small, but they're never really defined. They're all over the place. But then when you put your attention onto the electron, it collapses and acts in a very predetermined way. It becomes particle form. So the same thing happens in life. See, when you start going and using your mental aspect of things to go to the spiritual aspect of things, that is going to wave form. Now, wave is the source of everything. That's why I say spiritual just means unseen. I can say wave. It's all the same thing. So wave is the source of everything. And then once you put your attention just like Jerry Rice did when he said, I am the greatest receiver in NFL history. Well, he did was he put his attention on the waveform, and what happens, like the observer effect, when you put your attention onto something, it collapses into particle form or became physical materiality. That's how this game is fixed. So my question for you is, what I want for you is, I want you to fix your life. I want you to rig your life. It's not important for an NFL player who has hundreds of millions of dollars to rig their life and rig the game. Why don't you start rigging your life? Why don't you wake up? See, here's the other part, what happens too, and this is the problem. And this was my problem, and it's a lot of people's problem. So, man, there's one thing. Let me erase all this. So there was one issue that I had, and there was a couple other people that had this issue while we were playing in the NFL. And this issue is something that you probably could identify with. And, you know, you can extrapolate this in whatever way you want to. But one issue that I had when I was in the NFL and in college, I was deemed injury prone. I was deemed injury prone. And what does this have to do with you? So remember I told you that you can go to waveform, or I'll call this a wave, and then you observe that and it collapses in a particle or materiality. Okay, the same thing happens on the negative side of things, unfortunately. Because look, the thing is, and there's a scripture in the ancient text, it says that God is no respecter of persons. Basically, the same fire that can cook a dinner is the same fire that'll burn you. Meaning that fire is no respecter of persons. So it doesn't matter if you imagine or go into the waveform on both positive or negative, the observer effect has to happen because of why? Your human consciousness. It's the most important thing that you have, and it has to collapse in a particle form. So the collapsing aspect, this portion right here in the middle that makes it collapse, it is your consciousness. Okay? And so when I was deemed injury prone, and I used to have injuries all the time, and every time that I seemed like I was about to get a breakthrough, maybe get a new contract, something happened and I got injured. For example, broke my right hand in 12 different places, have a metal plate in my right hand. In terms of me playing, it was the best I have ever played up until that point, until I broke my hand. Never played that well, probably was going to get a multi-year contract. But what happened? I deemed myself injury prone. And so what happens is that is waveform, because injury prone is not a real thing. Okay, it's just something that's in the spiritual or non-seen realm. And then I put my observation on it, and it had to materialize in the particle form. But I say this for you. Like, what about your life? What about your business? What about your finances? What about your health? What about your kids? See, everything. We rig everything. See, something being rigged doesn't mean it's rigged for success. It can also be rigged for failure. And I just ask you, where have you been rigging yourself for failure or success? Because this game is all about you. Don't look at this NFL stuff. Don't look at all this stuff. When you watch the game tonight, don't look at them and the players who win and the players who are successful. Don't look at it as something that they did. Get the clues and start doing it for yourself. Now, how do we do this? So, like, what are some steps to be able to rig the game of life for yourself? Number one is you got to be able to focus your attention. So a lot of times when Ndamukong Suh, when he would come to the sideline and when he would sit at the bench, after I understood that, I would just let him do it. Well, I didn't realize what he was doing at the time, but he was doing an ancient practice. He was meditating. Now, I know that most people think that meditating means to like sit with your legs crossed under a tree, saying Hyundai Sonata a million times. That's not what meditation is. Meditation comes from a Greek or Latin word, I can't remember which one. It just means to focus one's thoughts. Okay, so the first step of being able to collapse wave into particle. And realistically, I mean, these are just fancy words. The only thing I really care about is for you to be able to create the life of your dreams easier than you could ever imagine. That's my goal for you. That's my goal for myself. That's my goal for everybody. And the way to do that is understanding how this works, because it's this space right here that collapses wave into particle is what you need to be able to control. So meditate just means, it comes from, I think it's a Latin word, meditare, which means focused thought. That's all that means. It doesn't mean anything else but focused thought. So when I meditate now, I focus my thoughts. So every single day, so what Ndamukong Suh was doing on that bench, yes, he was meditating, but in reality, he was focusing his thoughts on what he wanted to accomplish on that field. Okay, but the second thing, if you really, really, really want to change your life and collapse wave into particle form, you need to make affirmations. Affirmations. Okay? Now, there's something very cool about the word affirmation. And I know, look, you ever see, there's videos of Aaron Donald. He does this all the time. He says, come on, Aaron, you got this. You can do this. You're the best that you got. You're the best that you have. You can do this. You can do this.
You work for right here. What you work for. All that training you did. Everything you do is for this right here. Come on, man. Come on. You're living the dream. How bad you want it? How bad you want it? How bad you want it? Make the big play.
Well, what's happening is, see, a lot of us, we make these positive affirmations, but in reality, they just don't work. And I'm gonna tell you exactly why they don't work. Because if you have a negative meditation and you try to make a positive affirmations, well, guess what happens? They cancel each other out. You know, if you even think about it from a mathematical equation standpoint, if you multiply a positive and a negative, you always get a negative. So that's the way that this works. So the reason why most affirmations don't work for most people, because they have a negative meditation and try to have these positive affirmations. But just look at the word affirmation. In the middle of it, there is a word firm, F-I-R-M. Firm means to make solid, means to make concrete, means to make particleized. Makes sense? So what an affirmation is supposed to do is just supposed to make firm what you've been meditating. That's it. So your affirmations have to be in line with your meditations, or they just simply won't work. Now, the third and final thing to be able to really collapse wave into particle is visualization. Now, I'll tell you, this is exactly what Ndamukong Suh did, and this is what he told me about, and this is what changed my NFL career. And I wish I had to learn this earlier in my career, but I'm glad it didn't, because now any success that I have after the NFL is not because of football, because football is long gone. It is because of these three things right here. And anytime I ever get through any problem, any situation, any trial in my life, I know that if I go back to these three right here, meditation, affirmation, and visualization, I know everything will work out oh so smooth. And this is what I want for you. And so visualization, let me put a definition on it, because, you know, any good teacher has to define his terms. Visualization just means to make a mental movie of something. Now, what is that something? Well, if you want to do it properly and really collapse wave into particle and really change your life the way I want you to change your life, and the way I know you want to change your life, all you have to do is make a mental movie of what you've been meditating and affirming. That's it. It's very simple. But here's what happens. When you have a negative meditation, when you're thinking about what could go wrong, when you're thinking about being injury prone like I was, when I was thinking about not getting cut from a team, well, do you know that the subconscious mind never hears not? That is not a reality in the subconscious mind. See, the subconscious, the way it works is it only focuses on the subject of the sentence, not the intent of it. So if I say, I do not want to get injury prone, you know what the subconscious mind hears? Injury prone. I do. If I ask people all the time, like, what do you want in life? I just don't want to worry. Do you know what the subconscious mind hears? Worry. I don't want to be broke. Do you know what the subconscious mind hears? Broke. And so these are what happens. So if you want to be able to change your life and make a mental movie, all you have to do is get a positive meditation and a positive affirmation and just create a mental movie of those things which you want to see. That's it. It's that simple. Now, but there's a secret too. And I'll give you this secret for free because I like you. I like you a lot. And I like you a lot because, you know, I want us all to win this thing called life together. And life was actually designed to be easy. I know most people say it's hard, but it's only hard when you don't know how it operates correctly. And it seems hard because, you know, when it seems like you keep beating your head against a wall in life, well, it seems like life is hard. But what if it was easy? We just don't understand how it operates. So let me give you the secret sauce. Now, I told you that we'll call it MAV, right? Meditation, affirmation, visualization, right? That collapses wave into particle, all right? And that makes materiality manifest itself, if you want to use that word. But there's one little secret that will really turbocharge your results. And it's a thing called emotion. Emotion will absolutely change your life. And if you can put emotions with your visualization, you'll be amazed at what can happen. Now, let me tell you. Here's why this works. Did you know that your mind cannot tell the difference